In this video I'm going to teach you about female fat loss, menstruation and how you should adjust your diet and training for the best results. And if you want to learn more about no bullshit fitness, then subscribe to my channel and turn the ring bell on. So when it comes to fat loss, we already know that there are a lot of variables to take into consideration, like how many calories should you eat, how to track your calories to begin with, how to optimize your pre and post workout nutrition, when to make changes during the progress. And the usual answer is always it depends. No shit. As I always say, it always depends because it will be highly individual. And my goal here is not to tell you what's right and what's wrong. My goal is to teach you as much as possible so you can learn this shit, so you can implement the things you want in your life based on your goals. Anyway, female physiology is not the same as male physiology, and it should be approached differently. And here is exactly where I can see many coaches lack of knowledge and can't help or understand their clients fully. And by the way, before we start, I'm going to use words like female, woman and stuff like that. So if you're a moron and be like, it's a person, then you can fuck off. I'm here to help you and please try to understand that. And as a male coach with mostly female clients, I got really interested in educating myself more about female physiology because I didn't really understand why some of the applications worked very well for my male clients but not for my female clients. And here is the answer. And one more disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a female expert by any means, but there are some key points I want you as a female or if you're a coach to be aware of. And that is your menstrual cycle and how to adjust your diet and training for it. I'm not going to dive into the hormones and why shit happens. Instead, I'm going to give you the practical advices that you can implement right away. So a menstrual cycle has an average of 28 days, some more, some less. And in one cycle, there are two phases I want you to be aware of: the follicular phase, early and late, and the luteal phase, early and late. The follicular phase starts with the menses, aka the bleeding, and lasts for about 3 to 5 days. And then the follicular phase continues all the way until ovulation, where the luteal phase is officially on, and then everything starts over again. So this tells us that females have different stages depending on which cycle they're in. Studies have shown that females feeling most tired and having the most cravings in the luteal phase and especially in the late luteal phase, while feeling the strongest and making the most progress in the follicular phase and are super loving when ovulating, which makes sense because they're most fertile. So men, take notes. And the reason why hunger and cravings kicks in could be explained by females having a higher metabolism in the luteal phase due to hormonal changes and requires around 100 to 300 calories extra. Studies actually shown that females tend to eat more calories in the luteal phase than in the follicular phase, which makes sense if the body requires more energy. So with this information, how can we approach the female diet and training? Because we already know that females feels the strongest in the follicular phase, it makes sense to put the most heavy strength focused work in the first 2 weeks and transition to a more volume hypertrophy work in the late luteal phase, or even plan out a deload week for the late luteal phase depending on how hard it hits you. And when it comes to the diet itself, there are many ways to approach it, and it will depend from person to person, of course, but here is some guidelines that you can play around with. I recommend you to start the fat loss phase in the follicular phase as it's easier than in the luteal phase, so you're not thinking it's too hard and end up quitting. And instead of binging on 5,000 calories, allow yourself to have 100 to 300 calories extra per day to battle this harder period. And it's nothing wrong with you dieting for only 2 weeks of the month and taking a diet break for the rest of the 2 weeks. This is probably the best approach and the most sustainable one, but there is only one side effect: it takes longer time. And here's a side note, you could also twist everything around and take advantage of this luteal phase and boost your fat loss progress. I wouldn't recommend you to do it if you're not feeling well and can't perform well. Either way, it makes more sense to structure your refeeds and your diet breaks in the luteal phase as it's harder period and your body requires more energy. So this was an explanation of how it usually looks like for a female. But now to the most important part that I don't see many people talk about, and that is how to measure your fat loss progress without going crazy. And I've already done a full video about how to measure your fat loss progress, but I do realize that I have to expand on that because it's not simply the same for a male. In that video I dive deeper into how to use your tools in a more logical way. Instead of weighing yourself once per week and hoping for the scale to be super nice to you, you should collect daily weights and take the weekly average and compare weekly average to the next weekly average, along with using multiple tools like pictures and measurements so you're not basing your whole progress on the numbers of the scale. However, as I just explained for you, females have different stages depending on where they are in their cycle, so comparing week 1 to week 2 to week 3 will simply not give you a fair comparison. So a more logical way to measure your fat loss progress for females is to compare cycle to cycle. So week 1 to week 1, week 2 to week 2, week 3 to week 3, and week 4 to week 4. If we take a closer look at one of my female clients, you can see her weights here. And if we didn't compare week 4 to week 4, for example, we would think that she gained weight or didn't make any progress from week 3. And we would have made unnecessary adjustments when she's actually doing great. So do not do that mistake and compare cycle to cycle for better understanding and for the bigger picture of how it's actually going on. So to summarize everything, in the follicular phase, keep the calories the same and focus on your fat loss progress by achieving a calorie deficit. Try to put the heavy strength focused work in this phase, preferably in the early follicular phase. And this period is probably the best time to start a fat loss. And in the luteal phase, I recommend you to put your higher volume and hypertrophy focused work here, and if needed you can implement a deload week where you drop the weights and the volume for the luteal phase. I recommend you to increase your calorie intake by 100 to 300 calories per day, or if you feel great you can use this time to boost fat loss further. And this is probably the best time to implement refits and diet breaks. Boom! So this is all I got for female fat loss. I really hope that you liked this video and now understand that female physiology is not the same as for men that doesn't have to think about this. If you did like this video, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Also don't forget to follow me on Instagram and share this video with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Peace!